Hello everyone and welcome once again to the Dubai World Trade Center for the final day of the WCIT 12 conference. It's been quite a grueling 2 weeks for the 1,600 or so delegates that have been working here, and shortly we'll be wrapping up with the official signing of the final acts followed by the closing ceremony. In addition to our special guests here today, we're also joined by a room full of journalists working on site, and we'll shortly be taking a mix of questions from them and from those of you online. But for the moment, I'd like to hand over to our special guests, Dr. Hamadoun Touré, Secretary General of the International Telecommunication Union, and Mr. Mohammed Al Ghanim, who was the Chairman of WCIT 12. Thank you. First of all, Dr. Touré, thank you.
Thank you very much, and good morning to you all. And I'm very pleased that this conference is coming very successfully to an end with a number of very key issues that will help trigger more investment in infrastructure for information and communication technologies in the years to come and the decades to come. Some of the major achievements are clear agreements on ensuring that global roaming costs will go down, that there will be more investment in broadband infrastructure, and that there is a special provision for small island developing states and landlocked countries. We have a special provision for disabilities. We have, as you know, in the world we have over 650 million people with various types of disabilities, and we want to make sure that they are on board in their use of information and communication technology. We hope that the treaty that has been signed today will make it possible for the remaining billion people without access to mobile coverage today, to the remaining 4.5 billion people that are still offline. As you know, 2/3 of the human population are still offline. And when all of those people come online, we hope that they will have enough infrastructure and connectivity so that the traffic will continue to flow freely and that it could be affordable. Majority of the countries that will be signing this treaty are from developing countries that need it the most. The two-thirds of the human population that are offline are mostly in developing countries, and they will be the most benefiting from such a treaty. The billion remaining people are people in the developing world who will be benefiting this. So I'm very pleased that we are able to craft something that will meet the current demand. And the International Telecommunication Union has received a strong support from all our members, even those who have notified to us that they may not sign the current treaty now, and because they have to pass it through their national parliaments. And I hope that anybody who will read this treaty, the 10-page treaty, will enable you to see what is really in there. So, and I'm sure those parliaments will be able to ratify it. Therefore, I'm very pleased with the result of this conference.
Thank you very much, Dr. Touré. And now let's hear from Mohammed Al Ghanim, the Chairman of WCIT 12. Mr. Al Ghanim, your remarks, please.
Thank you, and thank you for coming, and welcome you to Dubai, UAE. As you see, yesterday we have almost concluded the second reading of the treaty text, and I can tell you one thing, that I was so happy that all the regional groups and all the administrations work together in a spirit of compromise to reach to this text. All the regional groups came up with the text that is suitable by all the parties involved. We have a text in front of us that has been agreed by all the regional groups, including countries who have decided that we feared that they will not sign. This text was heavily debated in the meetings, in open meetings as well, and we came to a very well-balanced treaty. And despite all the statements that we have heard, the treaty text does not include internet, as we have heard. The treaty text does not include content. There was, a proposal from the chairman to explicitly exclude content from the treaty, and this has happened. It was agreed. There was a long debate on the affirmation of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and finally the meeting agreed to that. We have something that all administrations should be proud of, and I'm happy to see a positive spirit. Started the meeting, continued. Normally treaties not easy to deal with. Normally treaties are not easy to negotiate. So what you have seen is very normal in all treaties, on all treaty text negotiations. So, but what we can get out of it is countries with their stakeholders need to work together with everybody.
Thank you very much indeed. I think we could open up now for questions.
I would like also just to add one important thing here. This conference has been probably one of the most widely organized conference, because we have, especially as a treaty-making conference, it has been debated in many countries, and the conference documents were translated in local languages in many countries. Poland, Kenya, Finland, many countries had their national consultations on this, and that was a very good thing that happened. And second, we also had a very wide range of participants here. Among the 1,600 or so of participants, there were government representatives, of course, but there were also other public sector and private sector, and moreover, civil society that was part and parcel of it. I personally engage with civil society regularly. I made a number of presentations to civil society in the run-up to the conference, and also during the conference here. I also had the chance to have my daily briefings with the press, and therefore the conference was widely debated around the world, and I was very pleased with that very special thing. And especially, as you know, in a treaty-making conference, debating in this manner brings more pressure on the negotiators, and that's what happened here. But to me, it was one of the greatest experiences I've ever had.
I think we'll open up to questions now. We have a question from the floor to start with, perhaps. Yes, Eric, thank you.
Dr. Touré, Eric Bass from the New York Times, International Herald Tribune. I was just wondering, do you think it's clear that the United States intended all along to last night, or was it a result of the negotiating process of the treaty text?
I will ask Ambassador Kramer this question. I wouldn't say that the United States participated very strongly in the debate here, and were part of all of the negotiations, and we came to consensus on all of the issues. So I'm personally very much surprised by the conclusions of it at the end. But United States were really very positively participating, and I personally met on a regular basis with the U.S. head of delegation. And yesterday we met twice, and I could never imagine that at the end they wouldn't sign it. And especially, moreover, I was surprised by the reasons that have been put in place, because indeed internet governance was not debated here. It's not the place for it. And I had made it clear from the opening of this conference. I have invited Fadi Shehadi, the CEO and president of ICANN, and the chairman, Steve Crocker, the chairman of ICANN. I invited them here to come here to show that we want to build bridges. There's two societies, the Internet Society and the Telecommunication Society. Those two societies really need to work together. And without having to take over one another's job. And I made it clear throughout the debates. I have made special appeal in this conference to please encourage us to build bridges among those two communities, because the fighting among those two communities will not help the consumer that we're trying to protect here. There is really good room for us to work together, And I have started that dialogue with ICANN, and I intend to continue the dialogue. This conference is just the beginning for this, and I'm sure with the number of countries we're having to sign this treaty already, will be majority. When was the last time a treaty conference has been just signed by 20 or 30 countries, and then it will go on for many years open? But of course, it's unusual in ITU that you have only probably 100 countries signing a treaty, because in ITU we're used to that full consensus where all members do adhere to them. Because the organization is a technical organization, it's never been dealing with political issues, and we don't intend to do so. And as we always say in our jargon, in this organization, technical problems have technical solutions. Of course, political problems do not have single solutions sometimes. And we have always never debated political issues in the ITU. I can say that now we see that trends coming in, but that's not ITU that I know, and I wouldn't let that damage the very strong relationship between our members.
We have some questions coming in online now. I'll take one from Norshad, Gulf News. He asks, how many countries will sign the treaty out of 193 member states? What will happen to those who have not signed? And when will the treaty take effect?
Well, the treaty takes effect, I believe, 1st of January 2015. And we have about 100 countries. We have in this conference here about 152 countries that have come. Among them, 140 probably have the right to have the right credentials, therefore will have the right to sign if they wish to. We had declarations from about 20 to 22 countries that have said that they would either not sign or they will postpone the signature and the adhesion, because you can only sign here. If you don't sign here, you can still adhere, but it is no longer a signature, but you can adhere to it. So some of the countries have decided to present this treaty to their lawmakers in their parliaments for debate before they adhere to it, which is a normal process. And I'm sure if those parliamentarians see this thing, they will see that where is internet governance that you're talking about. That's I believe that they will come into it. Yes, please. Yeah, Richard Hill was the chief advisor of this issue, and he can probably add more.
Yes, I wanted to answer the second part of the question. What happens to those countries that do not sign?
Okay.
So until 2015, nothing, because it does not come into force. After that, their citizens will be deprived of the benefits of better transparency for roaming prices, as Dr. Touré mentioned, better provisions for people who have disabilities, better protection against e-waste, and protection against what in the treaty is called unwanted bulk electronic communications. I think you all know what that's referring to. And I think that most citizens of most countries would prefer to be protected against such things than not. So as Dr. Touré said, I think that when citizens see what is in this treaty, they will want it signed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Richard. I will take another question from South Africa, saying, is South Africa one of the countries that has agreed to sign? Anyone know the answer to that one?
I don't have the answer to that. Maybe because we have the signatures later on this afternoon.
Question from the room, perhaps? Yes, Matt.
So aside from, you're saying that countries who don't sign are going to miss out on certain benefits which this treaty will bring, what are the specific implications for the internet? Are we going to see a two-tier internet? Are we going to see fragmentation? What are the consequences of this split amongst ITU members between people who will sign, or countries who will sign, and countries who won't sign? And I think it's probably fair to say that the countries who are going to their governments, it's a bit of a jump to assume that they are eventually going to sign.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I told you that this conference is not about internet. I said it to you in 3 different interviews, but you repeated again what you wanted to say, my friend. I said it to you. So now I'm repeating it. This conference is not about internet, so it's not about internet prices. cost of connectivity. This is
This is going to have no
telecommunication.
consequences for the internet.
Sorry?
The failure or the decision of several countries not to sign this treaty will have no effect on the internet. Is that what you're saying?
I don't. I can't hear your question. Please speak a little louder.
So are you saying that the split and several countries not signing this treaty will have no effect on the internet?
This conference has no effect on internet at all, despite all the messages you keep repeating. And I have told you that I've said that several times to you, but you repeated the same thing. What can I do?
I want to add something. No, I want to add something. You have used the word split,
Yeah.
and there was no split.
Yeah, absolutely.
There was compromise to reach to this consensus as a text, and we have one of the best texts that any administration will ever had or imagine that will come out of this conference. Don't forget that this conference is coming after 24 years. It had before we started this conference, we have massive campaign against the conference, as if the conference is gonna hijack the internet, and has got nothing to do with the internet.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you look into the articles from Article 1 to Article 10 of the treaty and the appendices, you will not see anything related to the internet. Even member states that participated in this conference, they were nervous that some of the articles will somehow have an impact on content, and we have put special provision to say that content is excluded when we apply the provisions of the ITRs, and I think internet is going to continue working as it is. We have not mentioned internet. Matter of fact, I believe that, and I'm going to reiterate what Richard said, for administrations who is not wishing to sign will deprive their citizens from many things, good things that's coming out of the treaty. Now, let me add something. Those administrations who said clearly, we have two types of administrations. Some said we will not sign. Some said no, we will go, think about it, and come. So I really see no split in the conference. This conference ended in a very satisfactory manner. Some countries decided not to sign. Majority will sign, and some will go back to their respective parliaments to discuss it and debate it and accede to it at a later stage.
And there is another very negative comment about freedom of speech. This is why we had especially in the preamble of the treaty, a special article so that freedom of speech will be protected, and to make sure that there is no doubt about the intentions of this conference. And but despite all that, the negative press continues.
Can I put a question in here from Monica Ermit, who was on site, in fact, until yesterday. She's now back home, and she's writing, countries said that speaking of spam prevention cannot really be separated from content, as how would you filter spam without weighing content? So from the beginning, was success actually impossible on this one?
Well, then I would reply and say all the companies which provide email services, then they filter the spam, or they get into content, and that's wrong. There are technical solutions that basically stop, a party sending 1 million email and flooding the pipes, which has got a direct financial implication on operators around the world. That's number one. Number two, customers, they receive massive advertisements. I will give you example of UAE. UAE, as an example, issued a policy on spam. And what we told the operators is basically to do a few things. One, to have technical solution to allow citizens or customers to opt out from all these advertisements that they get, and they have to make sure that they stop these unsolicited bulk messages or communications coming to the consumer, and the consumer has the right whether to allow it or stop it. But these are technical solutions to stop massive amount of messages from the header. It does not go to the content. And we have again, and I want to emphasize and bring it back again, we have explicitly put a provision in the treaty by saying that when we deal with the application of the ITRs, this excludes content.
We have I think you were, gentleman here, thank you.
I'm from Brazil. My name is Siqueira. And what you know, for first time in the history of ITU, it was in the center of a big debate, universal debate, mainly because the internet aspects. The other about the institution itself, that has been charged that to be very bureaucratic, closed in many times, and not open for a much broader debate with civil societies in many countries. How do you respond all these charges?
Yeah, it's a very good question. ITU is by far the oldest agency in the UN. It came before the UN itself. It was the first intergovernmental organization ever created that saw the need to have an international cooperation for technical issues. And it joined the UN when it was created. We're also the only agency which has 700 private companies, private and civil society actually companies, that are members of the Union, in addition to our 193 members. And what we believe in the Union is that our member states have the same right as the sector members, with the private companies and civil society that are coming in. Because when we're dealing with the issues inside the Union, we never vote. We avoid voting because voting means winners and losers. And we have managed to make sure that the private sector gets its right there. That's why all the standards that are made in ITU are made by private sector. All the spectrum management that we do, all the allocation of the orbital locations, those are deep technical works that ITU does in relationship with the private sector to lay the level playing field. At the same time, the regulatory authorities come together and learn from one another and exchange best practices. To tell you why we have a very long history of multi-stakeholder, ITU was the one that in 1998 decided to organize the World Summit on Information Society that took place in Geneva in 2003 and Tunis in 2005. And you know, that was the most wide-ranging world summit ever organized where there was no demonstrations outside. Why would you demonstrate outside if you can come inside and talk? And it came out with a wide range of resolutions and what we call action lines that are really relevant to the information society today. And that's why we proudly say that based on all of those things happen, the ITRs back in 1988 actually set the stage for the revolution that we see today, the mobile revolution. And it set the stage for the internet as well, growth, because internet is running on telecommunication platform. That's why we're always saying that we need to continue to build the bridges because they need to work together without having to take over the governance or the work of one another. It helps its goals. Now, the World Summit on Information Society came with 2 action lines, with 11 action lines. 2 of them are assigned to ITU for follow-up. One is on infrastructure. And infrastructure development is key for this conference. The reason why we need to make sure WCIT is there, WCIT will have a very good result, is that we want to make sure that the 4.5 billion people which are still offline, when they come online, the traffic will not be multiplied by 3. This is because only 1/3 of the human population is now connected. When you connect the remaining 2/3, it will be an exponential growth, not multiplied just by 3. And therefore, the infrastructure needs to be there on time. So we're talking about here access, and affordable access and secure access. These are the key issues that we're talking about in the WCIT here. And the developing countries understood that very well. And that's why we went ahead and tackled many issues, many important issues, such as climate change, energy efficiency, communication for people with disabilities. This treaty also addressed the issue of a universal emergency number to call. When was the last time you were in a country, you don't know which number to call for emergency in case you have a problem. We want to unify those so that it may be easy and those can be only done in a global treaty by everybody adhering to it. So there are a number of positive things that we are trying to tackle in a multi-stakeholder model. So it is clear that ITU has been always multi-stakeholder and will continue to do so. The preparatory process we had in this thing and the conference itself has even given us more ideas on how to improve it.
I have a question. Sorry? Oh, Richard would like to add something. Sorry, Richard.
Yes, I just wanted to add to the multi-stakeholderism. ITU achieves it in two ways. As Dr. Touré said, the ITU itself is multi-stakeholder, but so are the national government consultations. A number of the national delegations here had different participants in it, including civil society, and they'd conducted consultations at home. So we have multi-stakeholderism at two levels. And to the point of transparency, when did you see an international treaty being negotiated in full public view? All of the decision-making sessions here were webcast live and were open to the public and the press. Do you know of any other treaty-making conference that has done that? Are the deliberations of the European Commission open to the public? Are the deliberation of your national governments open to the public? This is one of the most open events that I've ever seen in my life.
And all the submissions are all on the web. That is one of the things that is clear. So people really know what it's about.
I have received some of the tweets, and there are people who are basically tweeting every minute of the plenary session. I was surprised, but people are really following up the deliberations, as said, minute by minute, and even country by country intervention.
Mr. El Ghanim, I might put this one to you. I've got one that's been here for a while from Sunday Times Johannesburg. He says, how was the new treaty prepared amid so much unhappiness from countries such as the US and the EU?
I'm not really sure if they are unhappy. I think during the negotiation they were happy with the compromise. And again, I think the solution was a compromise solution between all parties. And all parties, EU and US and Canada and Australia and the countries who basically said we might not sign, or some of them said we will not sign. They were in the room negotiating and they were accepting this compromise. And matter of fact, the other regional groups compromised far beyond their original positions. And matter of fact, during the negotiation there were provisions about internet in the treaty, and it has been taken out completely as a compromise. And that was very satisfactory to those groups who said we will not sign. So towards the end of the conference we were really surprised to see it, because the compromise text seriously satisfied equally every party participating, or every group participating in the room.
I think we had a question from Kieran? From Dave. Sorry, Dave, didn't see you.
Okay. Before I go to a question, let me add a comment from the U.S. Ambassador Verveer, who I spoke to last night. He said that one of the most important things that came out of this conference was that webcasting and open procedures, which had never happened at any conference that he knew, and he hoped that it would set a precedent for other UN organizations as well to open up their proceedings and involve people in the same way that you have. And Robert Pepper of the U.S. told me that this is the most open conference, treaty conference he had ever been to. My question's different. I'm an American, and I see that my country, with its allies, has set itself up against 2/3 of the world, either by number of countries or by population. So I also asked Phil Verveer, and I'm asking to you, what can the United States and its allies do today in order to lessen the gap that has developed here and rebuild those bridges so that we have a unified internet that right now here in Dubai feels like it's falling apart?
Yeah, this is a very good question. First of all, I have a very high respect for Ambassador Vivier. He's been conducting the U.S. delegation in ITU for the past four years, and he's really a true gentleman who's defended the U.S. positions very well and has contributed tremendously in the Union. And the U.S. was one of the greatest contributors in terms of the intellectual capacity that we are having in the Union. And I would like to commend that. I would like also to say that, yes, you're right. For a treaty-making conference to be this open, it's the first time that a treaty-making conference is usually, because our plenipotentiary conference or our council meetings are usually webcast, and we have full captioning and all of those. But when we are negotiating a treaty of this nature, the difficulty it makes, it creates a lot of pressure. Because what happens is that when you're negotiating under public opinion, sometimes the negotiators, the parties can have a very far position in the negotiation, knowing that the other party has also a very far on the other side, and hoping to come in the middle. Now, the difficulty when they are negotiating under public scrutiny, it makes it difficult for them to come to the middle, because even the middle may be too far from what they originally said, and therefore it makes them less flexible in their position. So that's one of the difficulties we have had here, and it was quite an experience. And the chairman and I were both on the stage when it was necessary to bring people to compromises, and we really very much succeeded in doing so. I believe that U.S. has a very good contribution in the information and communication technology, has very good contribution, many things to do in the telecommunication world, and we believe that that will continue as well. And I simply, this treaty today is just a beginning of something that I hope that will help us bridge the gap. Maybe some of the decisions that are taken here may not necessarily affect the U.S. One way or another, because U.S. is a very highly advanced or connected country. But we should remember that the large majority of people in the developing countries are not connected yet. And for many of them, for people from the 49 or so, what they call least developed countries, in those countries, cost connection to broadband today costs more than their monthly income. And that needs to change. And we are now in an information society. Our ultimate goal is a knowledge society. To get there, we need affordable and secure connectivity. And that's what this treaty will do. I think the treaty will open the doors for access, use of information, creation, and sharing. Those are at the affordable and secure manner. This is some of the things that we looked at. And in the process, we made sure that those who will fear that it will go into content, we put an article in the very beginning that nothing in this treaty will be addressing content issues. And some of the people were afraid of potential impact on freedom of speech. And there again, we put a special article to ensure that we are clearly stating that nothing in this treaty should, that countries should continue to abide by their international obligations for freedom, for human rights obligations. And those were very clearly stated in there, so that it be clear to anyone who will be reading the document. And again, I invite you all to please read the treaty before you make any comments, so that you will see really what is in there. Because there is a lot of talk of what is not in there, but what is in there is something very good.
Today I just wanted to add, today I see one of the headlines, and it was Internet UN Treaty. Yeah. And I was laughing. You know, I've just finished the conference yesterday night, and we have nothing. There is no treaty text in the 10 pages that I have negotiated with all parties concerned.
I think it's probably a good moment. I'll come, but Leo from the BBC had a question here. It's been there for a while now that relates directly to what you were saying about the freedom of speech text. He said, we said there would be consensus and not a majority vote on disputed issues, but there was. Do you regret this, he says?
Well, ITU's tradition has been always consensus, and I've been saying that before this conference, that we always go for consensus. I regret that Iran has brought us to voting, even though it was not real voting, but show of hands, which is unusual in our culture. We can test the waters and see where majority is, and then convince others to come back, so that we can have some real solutions that are workable for everyone. One of the key issues that when you organize these conferences, you're saying, okay, consensus means everyone is equally and happy, but we always achieve at the end the consensus based on the fact that everybody is equally happy, to the point that some people may look at their other party and say, why are they so happy? May have missed something? No, they didn't miss anything. This is how ITU has been working, And, in January this year, I brokered a recommendation between Israel and Palestine during our World Radio Conference. It's the only organization in the UN family where you will find such a resolution between those two parties. Just this week, I took the floor to repeat it again when the delegate from Iraq supported a proposal made by both United States and Iran. I said, look here, this is a wonderful place. Do you imagine, guys, what is happening here? Iraq is supporting a proposal made by both US and Iran. And none of the parties have withdrawn what I said. Normally in other parties they say, maybe something is wrong with what I said. No, this is ITU. These are technical issues and they have technical solutions, and we can live side by side. And I believe that human beings have the right to communicate no matter where they are born. And none of us has chosen where we were born. And therefore, and the right to communicate is one thing that we're trying to promote here, and it's equal for everyone.
I want to take a question from the floor, and Magnus there has been waiting for a long time. I'm sorry.
Thanks. Magnus Franklin from MLEX in Brussels. Mr. Al-Ghanim, I just want to go back to one of the points you made, which is the 10 pages of text and the articles. Should we imply that the rest of the text we can ignore, that it's not there? Because there is a lot of other stuff. There are resolutions, there's annexes, appendixes. Are we just supposed to ignore those? Or how should we read those? Please advise.
So basically, the treaty text consists of the treaty provisions. These are articles with their appendices. And then, it comes resolutions. Now, a resolution in a UN term is it's a very big of an issue, but in the ITU terms, it's a non-binding resolution. And you have opinions, which the conference did not have any this time. Melbourne, we had number of opinions, but not in this conference. And I know that the question, the resolution that you have regarding fostering the innovation and the growth of the internet is basically invite the Secretary General and the member states, encourage them. It's a very soft language. It's not a binding language. The resolution to start with has got no treaty binding language, and as well as the request that's coming to administrations comes in a very soft manner. And it talks about what? It does not talk about internet governance. It does not talk about taking over the internet. It talks about fostering and supporting the growth of the internet.
But Richard would like to add something, I think, there, and then we'll go to Kieran. But Richard, could you just add?
Yeah, to the previous point, the language that appeared to be most troublesome and for which there was the show of hands vote, as the Secretary General said, was one that from memory reads, these regulations recognize the rights of member states to have access to international telecommunication services. I have to say that I'm puzzled as to why anybody would object to that. Surely you would think that recognizing the right of member states to access international telecommunication services would be a good thing, and I don't understand why many European countries are troubled by this, so you may wish to ask them for an explanation.
Thank you. Could we go to Kieran now in the front here? Thank you.
Right, so I have two questions. I see a clear disparity occasionally between what you say and what people see. So we all know that the big argument about this has been about the internet, and the US explicitly mentioned the internet was the reason that it won't sign, as did a number of other countries. And you keep stating the ITU has nothing to do with internet governance. You say there is no internet in the treaty. But if you download the documents associated with this treaty that everyone else has signed up to, the word internet and internet governance appears there. So there is a very clear disparity. For people that don't know the niceties of the UN, they say, you say it has nothing to do with the internet. But then when you read the text that comes from the conference, it says internet in there many, many times. So people, please explain that disparity. The other thing is, you were talking about this being very open and everyone being, much of the conference being done in the open, never been more open. Now, I've been here and 80–90% of the conference was done in closed rooms with government representatives, to the extent that even ITU sector members were not allowed into the room. I certainly wasn't allowed.
That's a lie.
Okay. I can give you examples.
Yeah, the CPT closed coordinations, not the ITU meetings.
Sure, but what I'm saying to you is, sector members were not allowed into the room, requested to be allowed into the room, and said, you cannot come in. I personally was stopped from going into several rooms by security guards. So when you say it was all open, I was physically prevented from going into rooms. So how do you explain the disparity between what you say and what I experienced?
The conference is open, the plenaries are open. When the plenary sets some working groups, it designates some governments to go and try and find some compromises. And therefore, those can be limited, even to the number of governments that will be doing that. And then they go back to the regional groups to dispatch that. This, in a way, they do that in a way so that you can have some tangible way of getting to compromises. I believe that civil society was here. I consulted civil society. I have asked them we have opened a website for civil society input. I've sent some of those civil society inputs to some of our member states, actually, just to make sure that they bring it. And most of the concerns that were expressed by civil society were then put as contributions. Some of the civil society, even present here, were among them, some had difficulty registering directly, and I had gone personally to call some of the country governments so that they put it in the process so that they could come in. So we are trying to be as much as open as possible. But again, what I said, no matter what we say, some of you may have a pre-written article already, and therefore there's nothing I can do about that.
I want to add one thing as well. And I want to say it because I was the chairman of this conference. The meeting, civil societies, private sectors, other than governments, can ask for the floor. And I've never got a single request coming from the floor from those who's participating in this in the back of the room. That's number one.
Chairman talking.
Yeah. And number two, all the detailed decisions took place in plenary, especially in this conference. It's just a matter of drafting that took place in a closed room. That's number one. Number two, when the detailed agreements on certain provisions or certain articles agreed in the plenary, it goes back to a consolidated document which then presented to again plenary, where administrations, businesses, civil society see it again, and then it gets approved. Then once it's approved, it goes to the first reading for approval, formal approval, and then it goes to a second reading. There is 4 stages of approval for the text. So the text can change until the last minute. I'm so surprised by saying that this has been done in closed meetings, closed doors. Definitely it was not the case. The conference was, I was with the ITU. I participated in a lot of UN meetings. I've met you yesterday evening, and I told you I'm one of the people who participated in establishing the rules and procedures of the World Summit on Information Society back in 1999-2000, and I haven't seen anything as open and as debated in an open place. I was in the podium and I was getting messages on my BlackBerry, on my Twitter account directly as the chairman of the conference. That is amazing.
Yeah.
I have a couple of good questions coming in online, so let's go to those. The first one I have is Ingrid Lunden from TechCrunch. She says, what is your response to complaints from companies like Google that they have not had a say in these negotiations? Laughter in the room.
Google had 3 delegates here, 3 participants in this conference as part of the US delegation. I can give you the names now.
They are the official. They are part of the official delegation from the US.
Unfortunate.
Let's go to the next one.
The list of participants is also available online, so please go there and then see if Google's participants are there.
I have an explanation requested from the Sunday Times in Johannesburg. Why is there a resolution that's not binding on the development and growth of the internet if it's not part of the treaty? What is the point of having it?
Well, as you know, telecommunications and internet are 2 societies that are going hand in hand. And I always said, people try to put one against the other. It's not necessary. They are supposed to go in parallel and working together for the best of the consumers. In order to have internet access in a new home or a new business, the ISP will ask you if you have a phone line today, and then we'll give you internet. If you do not, there are technologies that enables you to get internet still, and then they will still give you a phone line. This is 2 societies that need to work together. When the majority of the people who are accessing internet today are accessing internet through mobile phones. And the mobile phones operators are members of ITU. The frequencies, spectrum that they are using and standard that are using are built within the ITU. And most of those standards have been built to make sure that they enable internet connectivity. XDSL is an ITU standard that enables you to have a faster internet. All the cable technologies, fiber optics technologies that are carrying 95% of the internet traffic today are standards made in ITU. Therefore, there's nothing wrong in mentioning that what we do should be able to be fostering the development of internet. And that's what this resolution is about. And the title says it very clearly, that fostering the development of harmonious development of internet, so that there will be enough pipes. Our constituency are dealing with the pipes, the highways that will enable the traffic to grow. And therefore, when internet traffic is going on it, those pipes should be there already. And that's what it is about. And therefore, there is nothing wrong to mention a resolution that is not part of the treaty itself about that. Will you ask internet people not to mention a telephone line? Would you ask them not to mention spectrum?
Mobile.
Will you ask them to not use the word mobile phone? No, they are going together. One is the carrier, the other one is the content in itself. During the World Summit on Information Society, this issue was coming frequently. Some people, when they have some difficulties with the internet, they could come to ITU to say, why don't you talk to them to let us have more access? And most of the time I was telling them, look here, don't get into the governance itself, let it go. Before you get governance, talk to internet first, get internet access first. And I was explaining, giving them a simple analogy between these two worlds, the telecommunication world and the internet world. It's like roads and cars. When you're building roads, you need to know the number of cars that are running in different times of the day so that you build the number of lanes. You can be involved in the standardization on the height and weight of the cars and trucks so that they pass under the bridges, or so that the bridges or that the bridges don't collapse under them. So, but when you and similarly, when you buy a car, you don't buy a road, because you may take any road anytime, and you may take pay a toll when you're going on some roads, and those are some of the things that's happening. So I'm telling you, the analogy and that analogy is a very clear, simple thing that enables politicians, some ministers who may not have technical background, to tell them the analogy, but the two need to work together. What is the meaning of building highways if there is no cars running on them? If there are too many cars and no highways, no roads as well, it's a problem. And therefore, there's a really need for those two societies to build the bridges. And that's what I started with a new CEO and chairman of and the chairman of ICANN. You know, we're trying to build that bridge so that people understand that indeed we can work together without having to take over another one's job.
We only have a few minutes left, but I'm going to take a couple more questions from the room. And I think, Ali, you had one, if you still have a question.
Yes. Most of it has been answered, but just a clarification. I'm Ali Khalil from AFP. Just on the non-binding resolution on the internet, the text where basically it says that recognizing that all governments have equal role and responsibility in ensuring international internet governance, and also their role in ensuring the security and stability. Don't you think that this be a cause of concern, especially that some governments are very authoritarian in dealing with the sector? Do you need like a text like this, if it's non-binding? Wouldn't it be like considered sort of legitimizing their action?
Well, we should encourage governments who are not doing so to do that way, to make sure that they give freedom to their citizens. This is why in the treaty, in the preamble of the treaty, we have an article that says nothing here should be against freedom of speech. We have an article in the preamble that asks governments to respect universal human rights. Those are clear things that are in the treaty. But statements that are giving the rights and obligations also of governments are very important. And this is why we put it in. But since the theme of this conference was not about internet, we said anything on the internet we should be outside of the scope, and you can do it in a resolution, and that could be an opportunity for continuous dialogue on this issue. I believe that it's very important that we encourage all governments to make sure that their citizens are online, that their citizens are connected. We are defending here the right to communicate as a basic human right, and that's something very important in the ITU. And so we remind our members constantly on that obligation.
I can hear that we're about to start the closing ceremony, but Armin, if you have a very quick question, because you've been waiting a long time, I apologize. Can't hear you.
I have a question on the economic impacts you have somehow highlighted in the broadband for the developing countries. How would you characterize the economical impact of this treaty we are going to see to be signed soon?
Yeah, that's a very important thing. You know, I created 2 years ago the Broadband Commission for Digital Development, because broadband is a future. Broadband is a space where voice, video, and data come together. And as I said, access to broadband today costs more than 100% of the monthly income in some of the least developed countries. how do we bring it down to the minimum that we set as in the Broadband Commission, which is an informal group, by the way, but has been very efficient in terms of guiding our work, with targeting at maximum of 5% of monthly income for cost of access to broadband. This is how we see it. We hope that by putting a treaty like this, governments will be able to put the right legal and regulatory environment that will be attractive for more investment and then bringing down costs. There will be encouraging competition. It is in the text. That will also bring down costs and increase quality of service. We have recommended governments to reduce taxation, especially double taxation, on telecommunication and ICT services and infrastructure in general, so that the ICT can be used. And we have highlighted the fact that information and communication technology is a tool for the other sectors to evolve. We are talking about the Millennium Development Goals in several countries. Through ICT, the health sector may meet its Millennium Development Goals through e-health, education through e-education. So we're saying to government, please do not tax this tool that is enabling the other sectors so that go fast. So all of this came out of this treaty, and I'm very pleased that those will have a real impact to put us really in the what I call the knowledge society, because when we meet all of these goals in the other sectors, then people can say that we are really in the knowledge society from the information society that we are in today.
I do think we're going to have to wrap up. I do apologize for anyone whose questions didn't get answered, and I will try and follow up with you one-on-one after the press conference. But unfortunately, our two special guests are now due on the podium for the official signing of the final acts of this treaty, followed by the closing ceremony. I hope you'll join us for that. That will be webcast. We're also issuing a press release, of course, in about an hour's time. So look out for that.
Yeah, and please read the treaty so that you see really what we're talking about.
Thank you, Mr. Al-Ghanim. Thank you, Dr. Touré, for joining us.
With your own eyes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.